Emily walked up the narrow steps to her room, her backpack sliding off one shoulder. It had been a long day at school, and all she wanted was a quiet moment to herself. But when she reached the top of the stairs, she stopped. Her bedroom door was open, just a crack, but enough for her to notice. Her stomach tightened. She always locked her door before leaving. Always. Moving closer, she heard faint movements inside. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly she pushed the door open. Her parents were there. Her father stood awkwardly near her desk, while her mother crouched by the drawer she kept locked. In her mother's hands was a small box, Emily's box. The one where she had kept every tip, every extra dollar, every bit of savings from working at the diner for the last 2 years. "What are you doing?" Emily's voice was sharp, louder than she meant. Her mother didn't even flinch. She opened the box, and Emily saw the folded bills stacked neatly inside, her years of work, her hope for college. Her father shifted uneasily, his eyes glued to the floor. Emily stepped forward quickly, her heart racing. "That's mine. Why are you in my room? Why are you taking my money?" Her father opened his mouth but closed it again, his face tight with guilt. Her mother, however, looked straight at her, calm and firm. "We needed it for your sister's trip," she said flatly. "Claire deserves this chance." The words hit Emily like a slap. Her throat went dry. "What about me? That money was for college, for my future." Her mother's expression didn't change. "You'll be fine. You always find a way. This is more important right now." From the doorway, Claire appeared, her suitcase half-zipped and clothes spilling out. She was smiling, her eyes bright with excitement. When she noticed Emily staring, she smirked, almost as if she was proud that Emily's savings now belonged to her. Emily's chest ached. Her dreams, her sacrifices, none of it seemed to matter. She felt invisible, like a shadow in her own family. Her hands trembled as she reached for the box, but it was too late. It was empty now. Her father still couldn't look at her. Her mother turned away as if the conversation was over. And Claire hummed softly as she tried on a new pair of shoes, paid for with Emily's years of hard work. Emily clutched the box against her chest, her eyes burning. She backed out of the room slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "They stole my future for hers." Hard-working, introverted, and quiet, Emily had always been the type of girl who blended into the background. She was 17 and rarely went out with friends. Instead, she spent most of her free time sketching in her worn-out notebook, filling page after page with drawings of faces, buildings, and dreamlike scenes. Her biggest dream was to study graphic design in college. She wanted to turn her love for art into a future. To make that dream real, she had worked part-time at a small diner for more than 2 years. She cleaned tables, carried trays of food, and even stayed late to mop the floors. The pay wasn't much, but Emily never complained. Every dollar she earned went straight into her savings box. She avoided buying new clothes, skipped hanging out after school, and even packed her own lunches to save money. Each time she tucked another folded bill into the box, she felt one step closer to her dream. At home, things were never easy. Her parents were strict and controlling. They expected Emily to listen without arguing, and most of the time she did. But the hardest part wasn't their rules. It was the way they treated her compared to Claire, her older sister. Claire was 19, bold, loud, and full of charm. She was the kind of girl who could make anyone laugh, even when she wasn't trying. Teachers adored her, neighbors praised her, and relatives always compared Emily to her. "Why can't you be more like Claire?" her mother often asked. Claire was careless, yet everyone admired her. She never saved a cent, but when she needed money, their parents gave it to her without question. She skipped chores, but Emily was the one scolded if things weren't done. To Emily, it felt like she was invisible in her own home. Her hard work unnoticed while her sister's every little move was celebrated. Even at family gatherings, the pattern was the same. Aunts and uncles would ask Claire about her plans, clap when she spoke, and shower her with compliments. When they finally turned to Emily, the questions were quick and shallow. "How's school?" "Still drawing." And then the attention would drift back to Claire. Emily always forced a smile, but inside she felt like a shadow standing beside the golden child. The only place Emily felt truly seen was at school, especially in art class. Ms. Green, her art teacher, noticed Emily's talent from the very beginning. She often leaned over Emily's shoulder as she sketched and whispered encouragements. "You have a gift, Emily," Ms. Green told her one afternoon as Emily cleaned up brushes. "You should think about applying for a scholarship. There are programs out there that could pay for your studies. Don't let money stop you." Those words stayed with Emily. They gave her hope. The scholarship felt like a doorway out of the life where she was always second best. But to even apply, she needed money. Money for application fees, for art supplies, for emergencies. That was why every dollar in her savings box mattered so much. Sometimes, late at night, she would sit on her bed and open the box. She would count the bills carefully, her heart lifting as the total grew. In her mind, that money wasn't just paper. It was her future, her ticket to a life where she could finally stand on her own, where her dreams weren't pushed aside for someone else's. But now the box was empty. Her parents had taken everything she worked for. And Claire was packing for a trip abroad, smiling as if nothing had been lost. Emily felt as though the ground beneath her feet was slipping away. Without that money, how would she pay for her applications? How would she buy the supplies Ms. Green said she needed to show her talent? The deadlines were coming closer each day. And with nothing left in her box, her dream of college was starting to look like it would fade before it ever began. A week later, Emily was still struggling to accept what had happened. Every time she walked into her room and saw the empty drawer, her chest tightened. She kept telling herself it was just money, that she could start again. But deep inside, she knew it wasn't just money. It was her future, her hard work, her years of sacrifice, all gone in a moment. That Saturday, her family attended a big gathering at her aunt's house. Cousins, uncles, and family friends filled the living room, chatting and laughing. Emily sat quietly on the edge of the couch, trying to disappear into the noise. She didn't want to be there. Her aunt, a cheerful woman with a loud voice, clapped her hands to get everyone's attention. "I just have to say," she said, smiling warmly, "we should all be proud of Emily. Imagine, she gave up her savings to help her sister travel abroad. Such a selfless girl." Emily's heart stopped. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. People around the room nodded, impressed. "What a kind sister," one relative whispered. "So thoughtful, so generous." Emily felt her face heat up. She wanted to shout the truth, but the words stuck in her throat. Her parents were sitting across the room, smiling proudly, as if the story was true. Her mother even placed a hand on Claire's shoulder, squeezing it gently as if to say, "Look how much your sister loves you." Emily's stomach turned. She had been robbed, and now she was being painted as some saint who had given her savings willingly. She caught her father's eyes for a moment, silently begging him to tell the truth, but he quickly looked away, sipping his drink. Then she saw Claire. Her sister was standing in the middle of a group of cousins, showing off a new dress. The shiny fabric sparkled under the lights. "I bought it just for the trip," she said proudly. Then she glanced at Emily and smirked. Not everyone gets to live such an exciting life. Poor Emily is always stuck with her books and sketches. The group laughed, not cruelly, but enough to sting. Emily forced a smile, her hands gripping the couch cushion until her knuckles turned white. Her heart pounded in her ears. It felt like the walls were closing in. She excused herself quietly and hurried upstairs to the guest room. Once she closed the door, her mask of calm broke apart. She collapsed on the bed, tears spilling freely. Her chest shook as she buried her face in the pillow, muffling the sobs she couldn't hold back anymore. She thought of all the hours she had stood on her aching feet at the diner, of the nights she skipped dinner so she could save more, of the dreams she whispered to herself when no one was listening. And all of it had been taken, twisted into a lie that made her look generous instead of desperate. Her family didn't see her. They didn't care. To them, she was just the background character in Claire's shining story. That night, as she lay staring at the ceiling, her eyes swollen from crying, a new thought began to form in her mind. She realized that waiting for her parents to value her, or for Claire to respect her, would never happen. No one was going to fight for her dreams except herself. She whispered into the silence, her voice steady even through her tears. "If I don't fight for myself, no one ever will." Emily begins pushing back quietly. She doesn't shout or argue with her parents anymore, but something inside her has hardened. She decides that if they could steal her savings once, she wouldn't give them the chance again. At the diner, she starts working extra shifts, staying later and picking up hours whenever someone else cancels. The pay is still small, but she tucks away every single dollar. This time, though, she doesn't keep the money in a box in her drawer. She hides it in unexpected places, inside old notebooks, behind picture frames, even folded into the lining of her school bag. She becomes clever, almost secretive, making sure no one will ever find her savings again. At home, her parents notice her pulling away. She spends less time at the dinner table, often staying late at the diner or in her room. Her mother confronts her one evening. "You've become selfish," her mother said sharply. "You don't talk to us anymore. You act like a stranger in this house." Emily bit her lip, holding back her words. Selfish? The word stung, but she swallowed her anger. If she argued, they would only twist it against her. So instead, she nodded quietly and excused herself. Inside, though her chest burned, she wasn't selfish. She was just tired of being invisible. At school, the pressure grew worse. Scholarship deadlines were closing in. Posters in the hallway reminded students about applications, and her classmates whispered about recommendation letters and portfolios. Emily felt like time was running out. She had some money saved again, but not enough. The thought of missing her chance made her stomach churn with worry. One afternoon, after a long shift and a heavy day at school, Emily stayed behind in the art room. Ms. Green walked in and noticed the dark circles under Emily's eyes. "Emily," she said gently, sitting beside her, "you look like you're carrying the whole world on your shoulders. What's going on?" That was the moment Emily broke. The tears came before she could stop them. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked, and soon she was telling Ms. Green everything. How her parents had taken her savings, how they had lied to the family, how her sister mocked her. Ms. Green listened quietly, her hand resting on Emily's shoulder. When Emily finished, wiping her wet cheeks with the back of her sleeve, Ms. Green spoke softly. "You've been through so much," she said. "But Emily, this could be your strength. You're applying for a scholarship, yes? They don't just want to see your art. They want to know you. Why don't you write about this? About what it feels like to fight for something no one else believes in. About resilience. About hope." Emily blinked, surprised. She had never thought her pain could become part of her story. Something she could use instead of something that dragged her down. "Turn it into your voice," Ms. Green continued. "Don't let them silence you." Those words stayed with Emily. That night, she opened her laptop and began writing. The words came slowly at first, but soon the pages filled. She wrote about her family, about being unseen, about working hard for a dream that others tried to take away. She poured all her anger and sadness into her essay, and with each word, she felt lighter, as if she was finally taking back control. But the struggle at home didn't stop. If anything, it grew worse. Claire had noticed Emily working late and sketching more. One afternoon, while Emily was preparing an art project for her portfolio, Claire strolled into her room. "What's this?" Claire asked, picking up the nearly finished drawing. It was one of Emily's best pieces, a detailed design she had spent hours on. "Don't touch it," Emily snapped, reaching for the paper. Claire smirked, her eyes glinting with mischief. "You really think this boring stuff is going to get you anywhere?" She held the drawing up, pretending to admire it. Then, before Emily could stop her, she crumpled it in her hands. "No!" Emily shouted, lunging forward, but it was too late. The hours of careful work were ruined, the paper torn and wrinkled. Claire tossed the ruined drawing onto the floor. "Face it, Emily. You're not special. Stop pretending." She laughed and walked out, leaving Emily trembling with rage and despair. Emily picked up the destroyed project, her hands shaking, her eyes blurred with tears. That night, she sat on the floor of her room surrounded by scraps of paper, feeling like the world had closed in on her completely. Her parents didn't believe in her. Her sister mocked her dreams. And even her hard work could be torn apart in seconds. She felt abandoned, unseen, like she didn't matter at all. But deep inside, a small fire still burned. She wiped her tears, straightened her back, and whispered to herself, "I won't give up. Not this time." She taped a new sheet of paper to her desk and began again. The truth comes out during a heated confrontation. It happened one evening when relatives gathered again at Emily's house. The living room was full of chatter, laughter, and the smell of food. Emily sat in the corner, quiet as usual, trying not to draw attention. She had learned long ago that silence was safer. But then she overheard something that made her heart stop. Her uncle, speaking softly to her father, said, "I hope you've stopped gambling after what happened. Using Emily's money like that was a big risk." Emily's head snapped up, her chest tightened, her ears ringing. "Gambling?" She stood suddenly, her voice trembling but loud enough to cut through the room. "What did you just say?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Her father's face paled. "Emily, sit down. You don't understand." "No," she shouted, her hands clenched at her sides. "Tell me the truth. You said you used my savings for Claire's trip. Was that a lie? Did you use it for gambling?" Gasps rippled through the room. Her mother's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting toward her husband. Emily's chest heaved. "You didn't just steal my future for Claire. You wasted it on your own mistakes." Her father tried to step forward, his voice shaky. "I meant to pay it back. I was going to." "Don't," Emily snapped, her voice sharp and full of years of pain. "Don't lie anymore. You're thieves. You're liars. You broke into my room and stole everything I worked for." Her relative sat frozen, shocked at the words spilling from her mouth. Claire stood suddenly, tossing her hair back with a smirk. "Oh, stop being so dramatic, Emily. It was just money. You act like you're the only one who works hard. You'll never get anywhere with your silly drawings anyway." The old Emily might have shrunk back at those words, might have let the humiliation crush her. But not this time. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded paper, her scholarship essay. Her hands trembled, but her voice grew steady. "You want to know what I've been doing while you've been laughing at me? You want to know what my silly drawings mean?" She unfolded the paper and looked around the room. "Then listen." And she began to read. Her voice shook at first, but as the words filled the air, she grew stronger. She read about her savings, about working long hours at the diner while everyone else enjoyed their weekends. She read about being invisible in her own family, about the lies that painted her as generous when she had been betrayed. She wrote about resilience, about holding on to dreams when everyone else tried to crush them. The room was silent. No one laughed. No one interrupted. Her mother's face turned pale, her father's shoulders slumped, and even Claire stopped smirking. Emily finished with a steady voice. "They stole my savings, but they will not steal my future. I refuse to let them." For a moment, the silence was so heavy it seemed the walls themselves were listening. Then one relative, her aunt, clapped softly. Another nodded with tears in her eyes. The tension broke, and murmurs of admiration spread around the room. Emily folded the paper, her hands no longer shaking. She had spoken her truth, and for the first time in her life, everyone had heard her. Emily's essay earns her a full scholarship, covering not just tuition but also living expenses. When the letter arrived in the mail, her hands shook as she opened it. The words on the page felt unreal. "Congratulations, you have been awarded a full scholarship." For a long moment, she just stared, tears filling her eyes. All those late nights, all the stolen money, all the pain, none of it had stopped her. She had made it. When her parents read the letter, they didn't celebrate. Her father cleared his throat, ashamed, while her mother forced a weak smile. They both knew they could no longer control her future. The lie had already been exposed, and now Emily was walking forward without them. Meanwhile, Claire's big chance fell apart. She had spent recklessly during her trip, wasting money on clothes, parties, and things that didn't matter. Soon, the money was gone. When she came back home, her suitcase was full of fancy outfits, but her pockets were empty. The trip had given her nothing lasting. Emily saw the difference clearly. Claire had wasted what wasn't hers. Emily had built something real out of nothing but her own determination. With the scholarship in hand, Emily decided it was time to choose independence. She packed her sketchbooks, her clothes, and the few things she owned, and moved into student housing provided by the school. For the first time, she had a room that was truly hers. A room no one could break into, no drawer anyone could steal from. Her parents tried to talk her into staying. Her mother accused her again of being ungrateful, of abandoning her family. But Emily stayed calm. She looked her mother in the eye and said, "You broke into my room and took my savings, but you'll never take my future." Her words were steady, firm, and final. She walked away without looking back. The new chapter of her life was not easy, but it was hers. She had her scholarship, her art, and her own freedom. She had proven to herself that she could survive betrayal and still rise stronger. And for the first time in her life, she felt proud of who she was. Emily, now in her dorm room months later, stood on a small stool and carefully hung a photo above her desk. It was a picture of her younger self, smiling shyly while holding the little savings box that had once meant everything to her. She stepped back and looked at it. The box in the photo was empty now, stolen from her. But the girl in the picture had never truly given up, and that same strength had brought her here. The dorm room was small, with plain white walls and a narrow bed, but to Emily it felt like freedom. No one could unlock this door without her permission. No one could take what was hers. She touched the photo lightly and whispered, "This time it's safe, and so am I." A calm smile spread across her face. She sat down at her desk, opened her laptop, and stared at the bright blank screen. It reminded her of an untouched canvas, waiting for her ideas, her colors, her story. For the first time in her life, the future didn't feel stolen. It felt open, wide, and hers to shape. She placed her fingers on the keyboard, ready to begin. Her story was just beginning. Hi friends. Thank you so much for staying till the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.